Hey, it's Recovery This Week. I'm Damon Frank.
And I'm Shauna McKenna Vick, and we're your hosts for Recovery This Week.
There we go, Shauna. How you doing?
Damon, I am fired up today.
You are.
Yes, I have, I've been thinking a lot about things that have happened this week with reference to mental health and addiction and things. I'm fired up. You
Well,
know,
thank you for everybody joining us here. Just to put it out, we're
sorry.
talking, no, it's good. We're talking about the week of May 27th. So we're doing a little recap here. Shauna, I know I've known you for a while, and I know when you're fired up. And I could sense when we got on here to record this that you were fired up. And I love it. I love it because it gets me
Well,
fired up.
and I thought it was better than saying, "Oh, I'm great," because I am, I'm doing terrific in my life. Everything is going well. I'm adjusting to reentry after being away for 2 weeks, the jet lag and things. But I, came home to that news that Grayson Murray, the PGA golfer, had died, and they say by suicide. And I can share some of the details that I read. And, they knew he struggled with mental health, and they knew that he had struggled with addiction and alcoholism in the past. He did have some sober time. I don't know if he died in sobriety or in his disease. But all I kept thinking is this is a man with people around him, caddies, other golfers. They walk 18 holes together. They do practice rounds. They are having dinner together. They are, their staff all around. The PGA staff is around them. And no one picked up that he was struggling. No one maybe reached out and said, "Hey, what's going on?" He withdraws, and he wasn't even golfing poorly. He was golfing
Yeah.
well, and he withdrew from the tournament. That's got to be a red flag to someone.
Well,
Why?
I have to tell you, and I always say this to you because you're on the front lines of recovery day in, day out. It's much
Mm-hmm.
harder for people who have unlimited resources to get sober than it is for somebody who has nothing. So if people are listening to this and they have nothing and they go, it's stacked against me, I can't get sober. I think it's easier for people who have nothing to get sober in a lot of ways than it is for people who have everything.
Why? Why do you say that, Damon?
Because
I
of
don't
options.
disagree. I just want to know why.
Look, let's look back. I mean, look, if I look back to everybody that I've encountered in recovery, this isn't
Mm-hmm.
an always thing, guys. And by the way, recovery this week is Shauna and I's opinion on things. We're not
Okay.
medical doctors. We're not telling you what's
No,
it, right? Like,
we're
so
not
everybody is
clinicians. We're
different,
not therapists.
but we've been around the block. Look, if you can put it off, and if you can clean
Gotta
up the
move my chair up.
disaster, if you could clean up the disaster, Shauna, and you
Yes.
have options, if you could keep pushing it down the road and keep drinking and using because you have options, you can keep it going for longer. Not always. Some people die right away, right? But if
Right.
you have nothing, people are less likely to tell you yes. They're much likely to tell you the truth about what's going on. And this is the thing with people who have unlimited resources or a lot of resources, which
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with a lot of those people, right? Like, and
Oh yeah,
I'm
so have
telling you,
I.
it's
Yeah.
tough. It's tough.
And I could see that because, I guess you can hide, you can uh, go away, you can make your own decisions. People don't necessarily come after you. I guess my thought is that they knew he had struggled in the past. So perhaps someone could have reached out to say hello. I can give you an example. I was working with a woman this week, and I had picked up through her social media things that maybe things weren't going well, which surprised me because things are going well in her life overall. She has a job, she has a fiance, she has a new house. So things are going well. And she's always been an extremely positive person. And so I just, I said, "Hey, let's get on a Zoom and let's talk. We do some work together." And I said, well, oh, maybe it's hormones, women of a certain age. And then she couldn't pull it together, and she was crying and crying and feeling self-defeated and lack of self-compassion and beating herself up, and I'm not smart enough. And I said, "Whoa." I said, "I'm just curious, I'm not a doctor, but what medication do you take for like depression or anxiety or whatever?" And she says to me, "Oh, I went off them."
Yeah. Suddenly went off of them, right?
I
Yeah.
suddenly
That's
went
a,
off them. I said, "Oh, are you a
yeah.
doctor?" And she said, "No." I said, "Are you playing God with your medicine?" She said, "Maybe." And I said, "Did you do this with your doctor?" And she said, "No, I just decided I didn't want to put foreign things in my body anymore." Because she's
Yeah.
extremely healthy. She's an amazing runner, athlete, eats well, juices, everything. And this was part of her thing. And I just said, "Oh, first of all, you got to talk to your doctor. You can't do it." And I said, I would recommend just, get back on it and then make a plan with your doctor. I mean, thank God nothing bad happened. Thank God didn't relapse. I mean, 6 months prior to my relapse, Damon, I was in the same position. I decided to go off my medicine, didn't tell my doctor or anything. And 6 months later, I was drinking. And I did read an article. Was it because I was off my medication, or what? Did I really have a relapse? And I had a relapse. We know my story, so many other things. But I do think that mental health is huge when it comes to addiction, sobriety, and getting well and staying well. And I have done a clinical trial with my own doctor on me and medication and can I go off it? And we did it properly. And I realized, no, it's something I have to take. I take
Okay. Well,
antidepressants. So, I mean, I, I have no stigma around that. I'm sharing it openly that I have to take it for me.
well,
I tried and
you're
it doesn't
tapping
work.
on to something. You're really getting into the crux of what's happening a lot in recovery.
Okay.
Okay. And whether people are in a 12-step program or not in a 12-step program. And this is one of the reasons why I started Recovered Life overall, Sean. And you know this is because
Mhm.
we would have these conversations and things have changed so drastically. I think the fundamentals of how to get sober have not changed, honestly. I think that they're shockingly uh similar to where they were in the 20s and 30s in a lot of ways.
Right.
But the demarcation line between an addiction issue and a mental health issue has people have much more awareness and they could pick. I think what happens, I think a lot, and this is what I've seen, and I've seen this in my own circles, right? Recovery
Mhm.
circles, family circles, things like that, is that people will lump in addiction with everything that has to do it. It's like saying, it's like going to a barnyard and saying, "Oh, that's a horse, but it's also a pig, a sheep, a lamb, a chicken." It's not. They're all different things. Yes, they're all in a barnyard, right? But they're
Right.
all different things. And what I think happens, Sean, a lot of times is there are things going on. People could be sober as a church mouse, and we know this, right? Like you're just
Mhm.
explaining a situation that happened. Sober as a church mouse, they're doing the 12-step program. They're doing whatever recovery program that they have.
Right.
They're doing it. They're doing it. But there's also a mental health issue going on that
Yes.
is, it doesn't matter how much that they do in the recovery thing. Will it help? Yeah, absolutely. Like
Oh,
I
of
think eating
course.
right in recovery helps. But if I'm drinking shots of Jim Beam every day, it's not going to help me no matter how well I eat,
No.
right? It's
No.
like, it's not going to help.
Damon, your point that people lump everything in, right? That, oh, well, you're sober and so you must be better with everything. Well, our brains take a long time to heal. And, there's amino acid transport, there's in the synapses in the brains. We have messed them up by putting toxins into our body with alcohol and drugs. So, of course, the brain is going to need time to heal. And there are different medications. And then, as you start to heal, and say you're working a recovery program, you're learning how to live life on life's terms, and you're still just not feeling it, you still got this big black rain cloud following you along. Hopefully, you're working with an addiction medicine doctor, not just necessarily your family doctor either. It's important to find the right team. We've talked about this, having the right team, a therapist, addiction medicine doctor, or a psychiatrist, and to be able to say, listen, I'm still not quite right. I feel like I have, you know, how I say it is this little black rain cloud that follows me around. Sometimes it's gray and sometimes it's dark black. But if
Yeah.
I'm doing all the right things, then I know that'll pass. And sometimes it just happens. Some days are just a 2. Not every day you're going to be firing as a 10. But that's different from depression, like real depression. And I've experienced that. And I know I never want to go back to that, the way I don't want to go back to being sober, because you're not motivated, can't get anything done, and you feel miserable, and you don't have a lot of love or self-compassion. And I think we need to address the mental health aspects as well. And everybody, and then on the flip side, people are saying break the mental health stigma, break the mental health stigma. But are we really moving forward with that, or are people just saying
Well,
that?
I think we are to a certain degree. The fact that we're talking about it openly sober, that we're both openly sober talking about it, I think
Right.
yes. Okay. But I will tell you, and you and I well know because we come from the 12-step thing. When we talk about things like this, there's a little thing inside of us that says you're not supposed to talk about stuff like that, right? Because you
Well, in
weren't
a meeting, you're
like,
not supposed to talk about it. We
yeah,
could talk
in a
about it
meeting,
outside me.
we could
In a
talk
meeting,
about
it
it.
doesn't belong in a meeting. A meeting is the tools to get sober. So I do understand and respect that. And
But
even in the big book, go ahead.
no, go ahead with the
No,
big book.
Damien, I was going to say, even in the big book, it says, I was just reading the doctor's opinion with the new sponsor yesterday. It says that other help may be needed, other interventions may be needed outside of the program. So, medical interventions for detox. It doesn't come out and say therapists, but it says to work with doctors on, psychological issues. It does say that.
Well,
So the
look,
book addresses it.
we have a doctor, if you read the doctor's opinion, which I love, right? It's the first thing that I read. I read it the other day actually with somebody I was working with. We read that doctor's opinion and it says a lot in there too from a doctor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who worked at
Right.
Bellevue, which was the height of mental health at that time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I
Mm-hmm.
want to say something about this Grayson thing, right? Because
Okay.
we don't know if he used again. Same thing with Matthew
No.
Perry, right? Like, so I want to talk about also, I want to bring Matthew Perry into this because
Sure.
I've had every normie that I know in the world that knows that I'm sober
Ask you, yeah.
has asked me about Matthew Perry. Do you think he was sober? Did he relapse because he took that drug, even though it was with the doctor, right? There's all these questions. Well, how come you could take that, but you can't take something socially and all that? Like, like there's a lot, and I don't have the answers for all of it, but I'm going to tell you this as somebody who was a handler. Okay. I was a handler at a pretty high level. I was one of those people around people like this. Okay. In the
Mm-hmm.
entertainment and still am to a certain degree with certain people. Okay. And
Right.
I will tell you why I think, um, people will have absolute friggin' meltdowns and can be surrounded by people and they will let them go right into the ground. I know why that is.
Why?
I know because I've seen it firsthand, and I've
Right.
also
I
been
know.
in
I mean,
situations
you were in that lifestyle, or you were a handler, as you say, of,
because people
some
are
pretty
afraid
big
that the
names.
money, yeah, people are afraid that the money is going to stop, and the thing
Right.
is they're also afraid to tell the truth, right? And I have to tell you, one of the rules I had when I was really operating in Hollywood was I would tell people around me that I worked with, I would say, "Hey, listen," like there were a couple of employees that I had, one in particular, was he's not in recovery, does not have an addiction problem. He knew my situation and we were good
Mm-hmm.
friends. And when we went out, I told him, I said, I will even put this in writing. If I'm out and you ever see me drinking, like he would intercept drinks because clients would buy shots. He'd say,
Right.
"Oh, Damon doesn't drink, but I'll drink it for you." You know what I mean? Like he was
Yeah.
such a trooper. There was like, I had people around me that I told the truth to, and they could tell the truth to me. And they would say, "Hey, look, dude, like I'm not going to put you in that situation." They knew. Now, I've been in other situations where people relied on me, Shauna,
Mm-hmm.
and around the entourage situations where people didn't necessarily weren't able to tell the truth without some sort of problem,
Right.
right,
Repercussion.
happening, repercussion, or they were just afraid in general that they were going to get cut off, right, and not be in the inner circle anymore, and
Sure.
they won't tell the truth. So you could have 10 handlers deep, agents, publicists, personal managers, personal assistants, private assistants,
Right.
all these people, they're just afraid. They're not going to say
They're
anything.
just afraid. Well, here, you've really got me fired up now. That's too fucking bad, right? I'm sorry you're
Yeah.
going to lose your job, but someone's going to lose their life. And that's pretty selfish way to be. I'm so afraid to say something. So let's bring it down. People that are watching this aren't handlers. They're just normal people like me living normal lives and afraid to intervene or say something. Because you're right, it comes down to that fear, right? That fear of um what's the repercussion going to be? Well, what's the worst that could happen? They scream at you? They tell
Well, the
you,
worst that
"Don't come
happens
over
is
here?"
you lose a lot of money. That, and
Oh,
I'm
I'm not
telling you,
talking about
quite
that. I'm saying
honestly,
let's bring it down to my level where I'm not working with a handler or whatever, okay? Let's bring it down to what the people who are watching this show, they are not out there being interrupt. Maybe they
yeah.
are. Maybe there are some that are part of the entourage. But in a normal situation, in a 99% of the world situation, not the 1%, what are some of the fears for
I'll
not
tell
speaking
you
up then?
because you're not okay. So a lot of times, this is my personal opinion about this. All this is our personal opinion.
It's all our personal opinion, and
Okay.
we
A
like
lot of
getting
times,
fired up.
the celebrity, non-celebrity doesn't have to be a celebrity. So, for example, I'm going to give you an example. I worked with somebody in the past. I've worked with a lot of business people in the recovery thing with
Mhm.
therapists. Okay. Like on teams with therapists. Not my main gig, but we've worked on people together and stuff.
Yeah,
So,
well, when you're on a
okay.
clinical team, I'm not a clinician, but I am part of the clinical team when I'm doing
When you're
interventions and
working with
things.
anyone who
Yeah.
has power, and money is power, or they have power,
Mhm.
they have status or whatever, I think it's very important if you're on the recovery team, if you're part of them, to say, look, like I would say right up front, you don't impress me. Like as an individual, I'm sure you're a nice person. I'll get to know you, but you don't impress me. I'm not wowed by it. I don't give a crap about your status or money. I'm just going to tell you the truth. And if we can't have a relationship on that and you don't like that, basically F off. I don't care. I don't care. I know, like, and I've said this, like, I know a lot more wealthier, powerful people than you. You don't impress me in that level. Like, I'm here to help you with this particular thing,
Right.
right? And you're not going to wow me to not tell you the truth. I love you enough. And this is the thing with everybody. And I say this a lot. I love you enough to tell you the truth. The truth is, you're out of control, right?
Or it
You're,
appears that you're out of control instead of using
or
like a
you
shaming,
are out of
blaming
control.
statement. Oh, wow, that's straight out there. I mean, if you could say you've had 3 DWIs, your things are out of control, but we have to watch our language too, right? Because we don't want to
Yes,
push them
yes.
back into a corner.
I'm not for everybody. I'm not for everybody,
I
clearly. But
love
what, no,
that,
but what
David.
I'm
I'm
telling
not
you,
for everybody. I'm
I'm
not for
not.
everybody either. No, I get it. I get it. So
This whole thing
these
back and forth,
people,
and this
so
is the money
let's
part of
pull
it.
it back down to the other 99% that aren't trying to impress you. I love what you said. I love you, so I'm going to tell you the truth.
Yes.
So families or friends that need to pick up that something's not quite right with another person to be able to go and say to them, "Hey, can you just level with me? I see your behavior is going this and this and this. You've been crying a lot, you've been isolating a lot. What's going on? Are you okay?" Well, that is a yes or no statement. That's not a really great question, but tell me what's going on in your mind or your heart. You know, why are we
Yeah.
afraid to say something?
Well, I
It's
think a
not for
couple of
losing money, but
things.
we're losing. So back to what this was, I started this conversation just a couple of points ago. What are why are we afraid to intervene like that?
I'll tell you, people in recovery, I think, are afraid to intervene. I think because they're afraid that they might have mental health issues and it won't be solved by their addiction protocol. I'm telling you, I've seen this firsthand. I was part of a group where somebody, it was a 12-step group, and somebody was like, you can't, like, therapists aren't good, psychologists aren't good. Like, there are people out there that are like that, right? There's a
Right. There are,
stigma against
and
it.
don't listen to them. Don't listen
Yeah,
to them.
if you don't work let's get into this because this is I love recover this because we could really talk about what's going on with us and our experience and what's
This
going on
is
in the
just
news and
us
stuff.
chatting, like
This
having
is us
normal
chatting.
conversations. This is not
Exactly.
like we are not doing this podcast to like influence people. This is for y'all to get to know us
This is
and
our
just,
cheap
you know, be
therapy.
it's our cheap therapy. And, you know, sometimes we don't really make headway. But it's really, I mean, honestly, I think we do this, Damon, just to chat about the issues. People can disagree with us, and that is totally fine. I can disagree with you. It's totally fine. And,
But
you know,
let's get down
go
to the
ahead.
real thing that I think is going on.
Uh-huh.
I think a lot of people, normies, don't say anything to people with addiction issues because they're afraid and they don't understand addiction. They think, and I'm just telling you, and you work with families all the time.
Oh, yeah.
I think people still really believe, okay, still really believe that addiction is a moral issue. I'm gonna tell you this too. I had somebody in my life, a family member that has known me forever and has been nothing but supportive of me in recovery. They'll
Mm-hmm.
remember my recovery dates and send me cards and everything.
Nice.
Tell me basically, call me one day, like after 20 years of me being sober, called me and said, who we had a family friend who was going through some issues, saying, hey, do you know that when alcoholics start drinking, they can't stop? And this person was really shocked. And I was like, this person really doesn't understand addiction at
Stand.
the core,
Yeah.
right? Now, supportive would tell me the truth, would all that stuff, love it, but you don't. I think there's a big misconception about what it is. Now, in recovery, I think people don't want to say anything that are in recovery and in recovery groups
Mm-hmm.
because they're scared shitless. They don't want to have the person relapse. They also, a lot of people that look, did you see the thing I did on bipolar disorder with the therapist who
No, I'll have
specializes
to
in does
check
it?
that out.
We worked the stats on this. So just think about this. In an
Uh-huh.
average 12-step group, do you know the overwhelming percentage of the people that enter 12-step groups are either bipolar, borderline, some other personality disorder, depressive, anxiety disorders, right? Like a
I
huge majority have a co-occurring disorder.
Okay. Yeah. Well, why wouldn't there be? Alcoholism is a disease of the brain. It's a brain issue. Why wouldn't there be other brain issues? If one method of amino acid transport isn't working well, then maybe the other synapses aren't doing well, or there's something deep down in the brain center. So, I mean, we know that alcoholism centers in the brain too.
I have had a co-occurring disorder that I did not try. I'm very open about this. I had anxiety for years
Mm-hmm.
and I had to have it actually professionally treated. I don't consider myself an anxious person now necessarily, although the last 2 weeks I have been, but it's rare for me. I'm usually okay about it, even though I kind of run hot sometimes and, I'm
Right.
a very up person. But I will tell you, I was afraid flat out because I believed that if I messed with any kind of mental health issue in treatment, that it was going to mess up my sobriety. I had that fundamental belief. And now I know
Okay.
it's kind of crazy to look at that now, but I did. Sean, I'm telling you, I did. I had that fundamental
That's
belief.
Well, and that's okay. You get to have that belief, but look at you were in enough pain that you thought, I better do something about my anxiety. And, when you say that when you're in a 12-step group and you might be nervous about saying, how you're feeling because there's a stigma or whatever, I I don't, because I've developed relationships outside of just the meeting with other sober people who I am close to, who I can be real with and be vulnerable with and be able to say, "Hey, listen, I feel like I'm entering a depressive episode. Just want you to know, you can't do anything, but this is how I'm feeling." Now, if someone said, "Sean, I haven't seen you on the meeting in a while. and you've really been isolating, you haven't been texting back, and I'm calling to check in. I hope that I would have had developed enough relationships that friends would see me when I drop off the radar. And I would say, yeah, I've been with clients and it's been busy and I haven't made it a priority. And I know for me, it has to change because I like going to my home group meetings and I like, being with my AA friends or being with my friends, period. And I would never get upset if someone came and said, something's off. Is something going on? Because I would hope that I have that relationship and to know that, like you said, I love you and I'm going to tell you the truth. I love you and I'm going to ask you this. And if I'm way off base, thank God I'm way off base and that you're just busy. Right. But we
Yeah,
have to be there to be able to
we do.
ask other people what's going, like the girl that I spoke with this week, what is going on? And she went back on her medicine and it's 5 or 6 days. She's waiting on an appointment with a doctor, but she went back. She feels like a completely different person. She's like, I swear I was in a psychotic episode. I said, yeah. Well,
Well,
not
I
psychotic
look,
episode, but major depressive episode.
yeah, a psychiatric episode, right? Like,
Yeah.
and the thing is I believe personally at the same time as we're talking about this, I also believe that doctors overprescribe and they don't understand addiction. And I have worked with people, especially in 12-step
Mm-hmm.
groups, that maybe didn't have a lot of resources to really dive into psychiatric issues and were just lopped into a group, prescribed a medication that was
Mm-hmm.
actually not improving their life and hurting their sobriety. Like, I've seen that as well. But
Mm-hmm.
we were talking earlier and I said something that I thought was kind of interesting and you sparked up to it. Like,
You always think
now,
the things
yeah,
you say
right.
are interesting.
I'd like to believe that, but it's not true. Uh, the the interesting thing is when you read that, like if you read the big book now, like if I read it like with 30 years of sobriety and understanding
Mm-hmm.
mental health issues a lot more than I do and having life experience and meeting people, if you read Bill and Bob's story, right? And I might be wrong about the names and the dates and all this. So, if there's big book
Just
thumpers out
don't
there,
say
don't
them.
kill me.
Just gloss over
Okay.
them.
No, but Bob got sober and kind of went along with his life, worked with other alcoholics.
Mm-hmm.
Bill,
Thousands of alcoholics.
Bill basically, like if you read it, and again, this is my opinion. If you read the big book, like I was just reading a couple of times, like Bill was a depressive. Bill, Bill had major depression issues
Mm-hmm.
and was tortured with them his whole life. And it's, back then, I think there was a belief, well, if only I work this harder, if
Right.
only I'm of more of service, I won't have these depressive episodes. And then being baffled and this feeling, and I've been there, by the way, with anxiety, because I was told you're just not doing it right. And I'm
Yeah.
like, dude, there's not much more I can do, man. Like, and I remember going to a therapist and talking with a therapist, and she looking at me like, dude, like, this is like, let's dive into the thinking about this. Like, this isn't correct thinking. Like, let's think about if sobriety is about clear thinking, this isn't clear thinking. It's not clear thinking.
Mm-hmm. It's not clear thinking.
That's my
Yeah,
thought.
no, I do think reading those books, or reading the story about Bill and Bob, and I do think you're right that Bill, my opinion, suffered from depressive episodes, but in other books too, it talks about that. And I don't think he would have been opposed to getting help if there was a type of medication that was okay. I'm going, thank God
Well, he
this isn't
did.
like,
He did try to get help.
oh, I know
He did.
he tried
He
to do
did.
so.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he didn't I mean, he was the one
But
who,
if we had some good
was psychedelics.
SSRIs back then, that maybe that could have helped him, like
Correct.
I don't have to use psychedelics and belladonna and everything else to help my thing. I
Yes.
mean, I take one little thing of something this in the mornings and it just makes the connections happen for me. And
Love that.
my biggest thing is I am concerned about people who may lose their way. And for this Grace and Murray thing, I I just, what a waste. What a waste. God bless him. God,
It's
may he
sad.
rest in peace. It is so sad. It's so
Well, I
sad.
think this, to kind of bring this full circle here, because I know we're coming to the end of this,
Yeah, we're
but
coming to the time. Yep.
I think the big takeaway of this is it is so sad. And if he did, we don't know if he did commit suicide. We don't know yet, right? You were
Don't
saying
know if
there's
he
a lot.
say he
Yeah,
had a relapse and was drunk and parked his car in the driveway in the garage, forgot turned off and went to bed. You never know.
yeah,
You don't know.
you
It
never
doesn't
know.
matter. He's dead.
But the
God
but
bless
the
him. God
thing
rest
that
his soul.
the thing I think that's the big takeaway from this that we can learn for everybody is that I think you need to surround yourself in recovery, and he was in recovery. He'd admit that he was in recovery, right? That you need to surround yourself with people um that will tell you the truth,
Hmm.
that love you enough to tell you the truth, right? There has to be a couple people in your life that you could call. And you know, um I I called George the other day, and I'm always remiss on calling him. He's been on the show a lot, and I love George. And his favorite. I called him about something the other day, and I was like, "Oh man, I'm totally screwed on this situation." And I was trying to figure something out, and I'm like, "Nothing's working," and blah blah. And he goes, "Listen," he goes, "You have choices. They're just not great." Like he told me the truth. Like I know, like if I tell, and a lot of times too, I'm very hard on myself, and I'll
Yep.
call people that will tell me the truth and say, "Damon, you're being super unrealistic. You like lay off yourself. You're beating yourself up," and that's probably like I could see me having an episode like that on the 17th hole, kicking ass and saying it's not enough,
Right.
right? When the world's going, what is going on? Like, why would you, right? I understand that feeling. I do. I understand it.
Well, we pray for the repose of his soul, and we hope that, you know, people are a little emboldened by our conversation
Yeah.
today to be able to reach out and say, what's going on? Are you okay? To someone
Absolutely.
if they're struggling. And I think your point about surrounding yourself with the right kind of people is exactly right.
Well, guys, this has been an amazing episode. Thank you so much. Definitely, if you're listening to this elsewhere and you're not on Recovered Life TV, definitely head over to recoveredlife.tv because there's a bunch of great content there as well. So I will talk to you next week, Shauna. Anything going
Next
on
week,
in the
well,
next week?
I'm getting my daughter ready to, she's 16, got her first job, camp counselor. So we're getting her packed up to send her up to camp. And I have a couple professionals visits coming up to different treatment centers.
Nice.
That's part of my job to really vet the places that I recommend. And yeah, just, oh, and gardening, of course.
Gardening, which we got to do another
Gardening for
gardening
mental
episode.
health. We have to. I could give you a tour.
I love it.
All right.
I love it.
Thanks. Thanks, Damon.
Guys,
Thanks for another
have a good
great
one, guys.
visit. And for everyone who's listening, keep coming back to visit with us and chat with us. And if you have ideas for what you'd like us to talk about, just send those in.
Comments below, guys. Go out and have
All
your
right.
best recovered life. Talk to you soon.
Bye.